this story is about my personal investigation where I spent my life savings, well, my meager college life savings, traveling around the world, researching organizations where authority was given to those just with the best ideas. No rules, no bosses, no contracts or unions. Everyone got behind the guy with the best ideas and he led. And with my very short time, I wanted to share two organizations in particular. Here's a little graphic of what it's like. See, instead of the traditional hierarchy, you have that. Two organizations that I think illustrate this best. One was a boarding school in London where all lessons were voluntary and children made all the rules. And second was a business in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where people set their own salaries. And when I started off on my journey, I first started doing the yuppie backpacking tour through Europe. And I headed off to a place where I heard children made all the rules. And so the fiery anarchist in me rushed on a 24-hour train to a little town called Suffolk, which is nestled an hour east outside London, where for over a century, Summerhill has resided. It's a normal school in every sense of reading, writing, and arithmetic, only each student, teacher, and staff is given one vote on school policy. And the basic idea behind Summerhill is that teachers are not mind readers. Only children know how best they can learn. So you guessed it. You can play all day long if you want to. But the curious thing is that most don't. And so to investigate this a little bit more, I went up to a young girl who was lamenting her math homework. And I said, why don't you just not do it? You don't have to. And I'll never forget this. She looked me straight in the eye from her homework. She said, because then I'd be stupid. And continued doing her work. I was like, I just got told by a teenage girl. And so after this, I'm an educator, so I made a beeline to the principal, and I said, what are you feeding these kids? It has to be crack or some kind of potent derivative. And she calmly explained, because she gets this question a lot, she said, they have no special selection process at Summerhill. They're normal students. But unlike other students, they've never been exposed to the same system, and they don't allow children over the age of 12 years old. Apparently, adolescence is the event horizon from which the scars of public education cannot be undone, which made sense to me as a psychologist, because children are the most curious creatures on the planet, and if you never give them a reward, they'll never need one for learning. So lesson learned. Happiness can be a better motivator than fear and reward in organizations that want to be led by ideas. And they were a little bit ahead of the business community in this, and that Fortune publishes the 100 best companies to work for every year, and they do a little bit better on average than businesses where people are unhappy. And among the top organizations on this, here's two quotes from this organization. I miss everyone when I go on vacation. It's rare to find a company with the same values, philosophy, and foundation principles. Going to work is like going to a family reunion every day. And this isn't NASA or some other really cool organization. It's a Tupperware retailer where they are enthusiastic about trash, storage, organization. And if you really want to make their day, ask them to rearrange your closet. The Container Store found something out about people. They're not so much interested in work if they can be creative and work with people they like every single day. And by now, I was living in Santa Cruz, California, where I didn't have to, going to school at UC Santa Cruz, where I didn't have to go do homework ever. And I could spend some time in the library when I heard about an organization where employees could set their own salaries. So I immediately got a job cleaning gutters and dishes and headed to Sao Paulo, Brazil, where I worked for an organization called SEMCO. SEMCO was an industrial manufacturer that was on the verge of bankruptcy because it tried to emulate Soviet-style planning along with the rest of the government. So one day, the CEO threw out the mission statement, and he said, gonna have none of this. So employees started to rotate. They changed positions every 2 years, even if they weren't an expert in it. They set their own salaries. They hired their own bosses in large town hall meetings. So they encouraged everyone to experiment. The thing that I learned from SEMCO is that in an ideas organization, really, you're just a piñata whacker. You don't know where the best ideas are going to come from. So you just keep whacking away at different ideas until you strike gold, or in this case, in their instance, boatloads of cash with a good idea. So lesson learned. In idea organizations, collective IQ is better than experts, and flexibility is better than planning. So when I got to graduate school, I started to learn that these organizations weren't just the fringe idea of utopians, but they were the key ingredients to at least two of the most powerful organizations on Earth. One of them you probably use today, which was Google. And I got the chance to visit Google and talk with a lot of their managers. And they have happiness down. A lot of people accept substantial pay cuts to go work at Google. The CEO says people don't work at Google for the money. Collective IQ and flexibility. They have something called 20% time, where they encourage their employees to spend one day every single week doing something completely unrelated to their job to just discover something. And when I asked about rules, they really didn't know what that word meant. And then another guy that you probably heard of, this one. I got to know the people on Obama's campaign, and they were ecstatic about giving away authority to other people, to people who worked and volunteered for the campaign, and they contributed via Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all sorts of videos that went viral and galvanized an entire population of people that other campaigns had completely disregarded because they didn't think that ideas could be the sole source of whether you should have power in a campaign or not. And so now what I've come to realize is that these types of organizations aren't just on the fringe, they're arguably the future. And so it's my job to tell the story, because they're coming, whether we like it or not. Thank you.